Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Keeping It Real.
Welcome to Keeping It Real. I am your host, Gabriel Fast, and today we are talking about Star Trek IX, Insurrection. I am joined today by two guests, Ethan Maestri and Ryan Mazzacco. Gentlemen, say hello.
Hello.
Greetings.
Yeah.
He said say hello.
Oh, hello.
That's right. You tell them, Ryan. How you guys feeling?
I follow instructions. I'm not going to insurrect against you.
I feel fine.
I just fine?
I'm fine, yeah.
Okay,
This
all right.
is fine.
This is all fine.
I'm annoyed at the man sitting next to me just a little bit, but it's what he does, so.
It'll pass very quickly.
Yeah, you'll get over it. It'll be fine.
Yeah, what was this called? This was called Drive Back the Night? No, we're doing Keeping It Real. Yeah, we're on Gabe's channel here. Okay.
That's right. Yeah, so you guys, you do have a podcast where you talk about...
We did.
You
did,
have a podcast.
right. You did have a podcast where you talked about another Roddenberry property, correct?
Sci-fi, yeah. Absolutely,
Yeah.
we did.
Awesome.
Right.
And
Drive Back the Night and Andromeda Series podcast. You can still find it out there. So
Yep. We still have plans to finish it. So
Sure. Yeah, but dude, it's just kind of on a hiatus at the moment. I totally follow you. But how long have you guys been doing that show?
started in 2014, and it is now a 11-year-old show from the first episode that we did. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've been on to talk about it before, and we've talked about kind of the whole thing. But I just wanted the audience to know that these guys are Roddenberry professionals.
We're coming at you with some chops.
Yeah,
we have a CV,
they have it,
and it's respectable. So
pretty much. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So
we've been in contact with the Roddenberry group. Actually,
we actually have. Yes.
Yep.
wow, that's those are some high accolades.
They were not interested in supporting our show.
They denied our request to join the group. Yeah,
but yes, we have conversed with them.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's cool. That's got to feel cool, especially since you appreciate the work so much and have been adjacent to those that were a part of it. So that's really cool. We're here to talk about Star Trek IX, Insurrection. Ethan and I have been going through the Star Trek movies for the past couple of years now, just as a hobby, kind of in the back burner when we can. And I've got to say, it's been an eye-opener for me. I've really enjoyed it from the standpoint of I know very little about Star Trek, but I enjoy methodical writing, and I really enjoy whenever there's layers of thought behind humanity, like the idea of humanity and what it means to try and like push yourself. And I don't know, I love the themes that are found within Star Trek regarding humanity and how we treat each other.
What we've talked about before, and we'll reiterate again, you enjoy stories that revolve around the human condition.
Totally.
And that is exactly what Star Trek is doing. So
yeah. Totally. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I've enjoyed, I've enjoyed the entire journey and the entire process. I've liked certain movies more than others, but I think I've been able to find something positive that I enjoyed because these movies are obviously dated. Did you guys go to the theaters to see this whenever it first came out?
Gosh, man, you know what? I actually don't know the answer to that question. I know that a lot of the Star Trek movies I did go to see in the theater. Some of them I just didn't get around to making it to the theater. So, no, I can't answer that question.
Okay.
This was the second movie, I think, that I remember going with my wife. We were married in May of 1998, and I believe this came out in November or maybe December of 1998. We had gone to see Castaway and saw that in the movie theater when it came out. And then this movie was the second movie that we went out on a date night and saw together because we both like Star Trek. And my wife actually really loves this movie and always has from the first time we went and saw it in the theater in Fort Smith. So yeah, I was in the theater for this one.
So you have a history with it.
I do.
How about that?
I do.
Yeah. So give us a little bit of lore from that time, both of you. You can give us some personal stuff, whatever. Like, what was the general consensus around this movie, like the hype for it? You know, was everyone talking about it? Like, how did you guys feel about it? Like, what was, like, put us back in that time period? Because when this movie came out, in 1998, you said?
Yep, it was toward the end of '98.
So give us the vibe. Like, what was the feelings around this movie and this time period?
Well, from my impression is I was a Deep Space Nine fan, and Deep Space Nine had the Dominion War going strong. That was the big thing. But also at the same time, you have kind of the up and comings of Voyager. And Voyager was really starting to take the Borg baton that First Contact had kind of placed out there in the zeitgeist. Voyager had kind of taken that from First Contact and had run with it. They had a lot of episodes coming out with a lot of Borg involvement. And so that was kind of the new hotness at the time. And Deep Space Nine was kind of doing its own thing in the background, but they had this really compelling storyline of the Dominion War. So I'm thinking going into this movie, I'm hoping we get something pertaining to the Dominion War, but that is not at all what this movie delivered. And so this movie is kind of an outlier in that it feels more like a Star Trek Next Generation episode. And at least in my opinion, that's how it was kind of received by people around me was, this wasn't, all of that. There's a lot better things going on in the television shows. Now, I understand Paramount not wanting to step on the toes of the television series that they were making money off of at that time. It's a product of its time. It was made when you didn't step on the toes of your other franchise, and that's not what we see today. Now it all has to be connected and interlinked, and it leads one into the other, and all of that. But that's not the age in which this movie was made, and so it's very much a standalone, and it very much feels like old school TNG episodes.
It is, and it isn't. I think it was absolutely the right move because DS9 is fully invested in this Dominion War, and we don't pretend like that's not happening.
True.
There are references to the Dominion War, like, oh, well, there's the Dominion War, and we got to get back to help with the Dominion War.
Right.
But it doesn't take anything away from DS9 in the sense that, whatever happens in this movie, if it's involving the Dominion War, now all of a sudden, if you're watching DS9 years later, you're watching reruns, or what if they come out with some sort of technology where you can watch it, just from your home or it comes through the air or something, Oh, wait, that's TV.
It's streaming.
Yeah. Well, TV, it did come through the air.
Oh, that's true.
We don't have that anymore.
We don't have that anymore.
They took that away too.
Yeah. No, but it does just kind of exist in the universe, but also in its own little bubble, which is great because even when there are huge things going on in the world, there's also people that are dealing with their own crap at that time. So let's take the war that's happening. We understand that, we acknowledge it, but we've also got this other thing that we got to deal with too that has nothing to do with the war, and that's fine because now it's a standalone movie. It doesn't have to support that story arc. It doesn't have to take away from that story arc.
In a way, if both of those things were going on, I would have looked at this movie like, hey, whenever this war happens, or whenever their war is happening, these simple things that are good in this movie are what's at risk. Like I think that's how I would have looked at it. And hearing you guys talk about it is like, it's really cool, honestly, because you're so connected on this thing that I'm just coming into for the very first time. And I think, we underestimate the idea that we lose the first feeling of whenever you watch something. Like, I feel like with Star Trek movies specifically, it's really hard to look at these if you are a Star Trek fan. Because if you're a real fan, you know all the lore and surrounding lore that's happening with this stuff. So you kind of just know what's supposed to be happening. Whereas someone like me coming to it for the very, very first time, I feel kind of lost. I feel like there's an element, like things are being set up for me to understand, but I don't understand. I'm like, that was significant. I recognize, like, I can read social cues. That was meant to be significant, but I don't know why, So that's kind of the angle that I'm coming at it from this movie. And I just want to say for the record, like, I did enjoy the themes of this movie. I think, like, it was really well shot in a lot of ways. I actually liked it was very sensational, like, on a surface level. And, I enjoy that. Like, I am like dopamine. Yes. Like, don't want to use my brain. Like, I chase that We know that. But I can also see what's, kind of between the lines as well, and some of the deeper things that are being said, and maybe things that might not be anything that was intended, but things that I might see myself and conclude whatever. I think Star Trek has always kind of done that for me since I started watching these. I feel like I always see things where I'm like, oh, if they're not tipping the hat there for this particular thing, I still saw it. Like, it still makes sense, So I think that's the beauty of what makes the Star Trek universe so good, is there is so much to dive into, and there's like real meat to all of it. So let's kind of get into that, and explore that a little bit further. Who would like to do like a recap? I feel like one of you could do it better than the other, potentially.
Ryan, is this your week?
I guess so. You got the trivia, right?
I got the trivia.
Okay, then I guess I'm going to have to. All right, so this is going to be rough. I'm just going to let you know that, because usually when we do this on Drive Back the Night, like, we have this prepared. So
Well, just do your
I am
best.
totally winging it here.
You guys can wing it, and you can have a wingman. If Ethan needs to jump in, you got go for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
it's
we'll
all
do
good.
Okay. All
I'll
right.
help you out.
All right. So I'm going to try to keep this pretty quick and succinct. I think that's going to be best for
Best way to go.
everybody,
Yes.
everybody here. So
We've all seen the movie.
okay. All right. So basically, the premise of the movie, Data seems to be going rogue at the beginning. They're all in cloak on a primitive planet. Turns out Data has uncovered this sinister plot that is being run by a side of the Federation, as well as this other alien race, the Sona.
Sona.
And the whole point is they're trying to extract the science particles from the rings of this planet because it makes people forever young, and these people are just deteriorating and dying. Meanwhile, the Enterprise is contacted regarding Data's actions because at this time he is seen as a threat and he's going rogue, so they come to capture him, and they are able to get him and find out all of this, that he has uncovered this plot, and he's been ordered by Starfleet to stand down, and Picard says, absolutely, I will not. They go and investigate further, find out that this primitive race of people on this planet are not primitive at all. In fact, they're extremely advanced. They have just turned their backs on technology, and they also seem to be benefiting from the science particles coming from the rings of this planet, as they are forever young. Did I mention that already?
Yeah, you.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Well, but it's a pretty big plot point.
Yeah,
They are
they have
forever
their
young.
paradise. They're not dying.
Yes.
So, yeah.
In the meantime, the crew of the Enterprise is also starting to feel the effects, and they're starting to be reinvigorated and feeling younger, a little more feisty, as if Riker needed that. And so,
Riker, who's also, by the way, the director of this movie, correct?
Yeah, Jonathan
Jonathan Frakes.
So yada yada yada. There's also a love interest because one of the girls is kind of pretty, and Picard's into her. She's into him. That's the thing. And so they come up with a plot to trick the Sona into. Well, they think that they're going to carry out their plan to extract all the science particles from this thing, which is going to kill the planet. So they're going to try to move all of the Baku, that's the people that are living on the planet there. They're going to move them to another planet and hope that they don't notice that it looks totally different when they get there. And so they put them on this holodeck ship, and the Sona think that they're carrying out their plan, while in the meantime the crew of the Enterprise, particularly Picard, destroy the array. The array.
The array.
Yeah. And anyway, they basically all live happily ever after.
And the Enterprise sails off into the nebula sunset.
It does not get destroyed.
True.
Yeah.
Earth was not involved in any way, shape, or form.
No.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You want to add anything?
No. Let's move on.
So I'm going to quiz you guys on some trivia on this. So who knows what this script originally started as? What was the first ideas, like the elevator pitch around what this script was supposed to be? Does anybody know?
That I don't know.
Was it supposed to be Romulans?
No. So actually,
And this
the
would
early
have been Brandon
stages-
Braga and Rick Berman's initial take.
correct.
Yeah.
So they come up with this idea, we want to have the Fountain of Youth. you know, and the script was, as it was being worked on, it actually got renamed a few different things. Like at one point it was called Stardust. At one point the plot was revolving around there being a love triangle. This movie went through some wild decision making, which seems to be the trend for for Star Trek. But we do kind of see that fountain of youth element being portrayed here, and you can kind of see how that seed of that idea really, you know,
contributed to what we got.
Yeah, contributed to what we got. With that in mind, how do you guys feel like the themes of this movie land? Like, do you think this is a good standalone movie? Do you think this is a good Star Trek movie? Do you think, you know, another thing too is like this was meant to also kind of echo the success of Star Trek 4, which was the voyage home. Like that was a big thing that the executives were like kind of pushing, is they wanted that. They saw the success of that, so they actually wanted to, you know, mirror that. So
even though you're 12 years removed from that movie.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting, you know, especially thinking about the time period it took place in. But
and
all that being
arguably,
said,
I would say First Contact was a more successful, well, maybe not a more successful movie than Voyage Home, but definitely a faster paced action. So the executives should have been looking for, how can we get First Contact lightning in a bottle?
Right.
Where I feel like they should have been looking.
To be fair, they did try, because, correct me if I'm wrong, the guy who plays Riker, he'd also directed First Contact, correct?
Yes, he did. So they put him in charge of this one, too. Yeah.
It was almost like a Taika Waititi situation. It was like, oh, well, he made Thor Ragnarok, like, the next one's going to be just as good, right? You know, that's the symmetry that I'm kind of seeing here. You know, and I'm not saying that I dislike this movie or I think this movie is bad in any way. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, like, I want to understand more about it, because with every one of these, that's kind of impacted my opinion of the movie moving forward, because there is so much in between the lines that is not shown. It's not given. There is stuff there that you need to be a loyal, true fan to, like, see the payoff. Like, I know it's there because I've become a slight fan, you know, so I see what they're doing, and it's cool to see, like, Picard doing his thing and being, you know, Picard. And I was like, oh, I'm starting to really get Picard now. And, you know, understand kind of the mirror between him and Kirk and this whole thing. Like a lot of that is coming together for me, and there's a lot of these undertones that are connecting. But, like, I want to ask, how did you feel, like, how did this movie land for you? Think it's a good Star Trek movie? Do you think it's just a good movie overall? Like, what are kind of your thoughts?
Well, when you say, is it a good Star Trek movie? So what that means to me is it Star Trek? And I don't just mean, does the title card say Star Trek on it? But is it Star Trek? And because Star Trek is a certain thing. And you good, bro?
Yeah. It did not come through.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, Star Trek is a certain thing. And what that thing is you're developing characters and you are talking about something many times without talking about it. And sometimes you just talk about it. And there is Star Trek that I feel, especially more recently, that is just not Star Trek. It's stories taking place in the Star Trek universe, but they're not really what Star Trek is supposed to be. When you see the movies are big. They have money, usually, then more money than they have for the TV shows. And you're expected to go big and do something big and flashy, lots of action, sometimes action for action's sake. That doesn't make it Star Trek. That doesn't necessarily make it not Star Trek. You can have all of that stuff and still have Star Trek. It still has to boil down to these key elements of what makes a story a Star Trek story. And to me, I think that this movie, it does do those things because we have issues that we are addressing in the universe that most all the time translates into something that's real, something that we can identify with and say, okay, yeah, I understand what they're talking about because I know about this thing that happens in real life. And now we need to make some decisions and have some conversations about this. That's what Star Trek is. They did that in this movie. We can talk about later whether or not they did that well or not, but they did that. So this holds up as a Star Trek movie.
Yeah, I agree. It has all of the elements of an original TOS episode, the original series. And we're talking about forced relocation of one population. Patricide? Yeah, because the Sona and the Baku are the same race. and the Sona are coming back and visiting evil upon their elders that kick them out of their home. That all of those things are classic Star Trek themes. And how do you address those? And how does our crew respond? Do they do the right thing, or do they go along with the bad admiral? Do they follow it as a bad admiral? That's a very Star Trek thing, that has an agenda that doesn't quite mesh with Federation ideals or values. And so all of those things, all of those elements are in here.
While you're on that topic, the very real topics, do you guys know what some of the events that took place in this film? What it's based off of? It's based off of real world events.
Well, I'm thinking the Native Americans, right, are front and center.
Right. Yeah. Trail of Tears.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
So,
but that go ahead. Yeah.
There again, that's what Star Trek does. Star Trek takes these real things in our history that we learn in school, or that we've read about, and it puts that sci-fi spin on them and says, all right, what would we do as better human beings? How would we deal with it? And that's exactly what our crew gets to try and do here. And so, yeah, this is very much right in the vein of what Star Trek actually is.
So, okay, Ryan made a comment earlier where he said, this is what Star Trek is. He gave us the formula. This is what Star Trek is. Like, this is what makes Star Trek, very compelling. I totally agree. They did this thing, but whether or not they did this thing well is another conversation. I know what he is saying there, because there can be elements of a story or elements of a thing present, and it's like, look, it's there. We did it. We showed this thing. It's like, yeah, but it didn't really pop. It didn't really sting. It didn't really feel significant. It doesn't really work, from a sensational standpoint. It's almost like you have to look at it more intellectually. So
yeah,
that's kind of my next question is to Ryan, what Ryan, kind of laid down there. If I was a moviegoer and I had just seen, I'd seen First Contact, and then I go into Insurrection, take the Star Trek fan out of it, how would you feel walking out of that movie?
I think from my perspective, the thing that works against this film is the plot element of, as you put them, the space particles, right? The effect of the space particles on our crew. It's making them feel younger. They're feeling their oats. They're more rebellious, right? They're having those aggressive tendencies. That's all the themes of what our crew is dealing with. And that element of the plot works against the message of what is the right thing to do. Because Picard has the conversation with the Admiral. He's feeling the effects of what's happening to him. And so in his responses to the Admiral, how many Admiral, he's being disrespectful to, a Federation representative or a Starfleet representative, a superior. He's being insubordinate, right? And that's not what an enlightened human being does. That's not what our Federation captain how he would typically respond. But he's feeling the effects of the space particles. And that kind of buries the being able to do the right thing for the right reasons and being in control of oneself. Is Picard and the rest of the crew are being insubordinate. They're doing the right thing, but they're also being rebellious at the same time. And so I feel like that's an element that works against this movie being able to present the right Star Trek theme and the right Star Trek solution, if you follow what I'm saying.
Yeah, and if you're not a Star Trek fan, then you've not seen Tapestry.
Yeah, that's very true.
And you don't know what Picard was like as a young man.
Yeah.
That being said, I also felt like that moment with the Admiral was right on par for Picard. I mean, I think when you're up against the wall, he's going to fight for what's right.
Well, yeah. I'm not saying he doesn't do exactly what Picard needed to do. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying that if you're not a Star Trek fan, you look at that and you're saying, well, the space particles are making him feel his oats, and now he's feeling rebellious. So, of course, he's going to stand up to the Admiral.
All right.
That's kind of where I'm feeling like the movie kind of subverts its own message in that regard.
Well, and that's literally what the research shows. It says the writers needed a reason for Starfleet. Why would they even consider relocating peaceful people? So they created the idea that the radiation couldn't be harvested unless the population was removed.
Yeah.
So like it was a plot device that, and I think, we're dancing around the subject that is really kind of apropos to what I found in this movie, from my perspective. And this is something that I feel like, I am learning to try and be a better storyteller all the time. And it's becoming more and more aware to me that you can have too much of a good thing, and then nothing is actually remembered. You can want to have all these themes and like want to land all this stuff. And, I'm putting myself in the perspective of the creators and thinking to myself like, man, we have this experience. We have all these great ideas, probably ideas that have been, being sat on for X amount of time. It's going to be great. Just like the last one, I could see why you might feel confident in, creating this story this way. But to me, I felt like all of the central themes didn't, to what Ethan's saying, they didn't really synergize. It kind of felt like we had 3 different episodes of TNG kind of going like in different sections. Like it was hard to follow. Like it was hard to follow and see kind of what the deeper message might be. And I'll tell myself, like last night I watched it, and I watched it for free on Pluto. So there was ads in between. Mm-hmm. So like I watched it and I was like, man, I just don't know how I feel about this. So I actually watched it as much as I could have again this morning to try and see if I could sink some things in. And, hearing you guys talk about this is kind of making me feel validated in how I feel, which, again, you've said it already. It feels like a giant episode of TNG, which I've watched very little of. But as I was watching it, I'm like, this feels like an episode of TV, and in one way, I feel like for Star Trek fans, like that's an amazing thing because you know what to expect. And like you're not taken aback by it. Like it's very easy for you to identify that facet of this film. But for me, coming in as a very casual fan, like I turn the Star Trek button on, like when I know we're going to talk about it, and I'm like, okay, like let's get into this. But I'm so removed from it usually that walking into this film, it was almost obtuse in a way. I'm like, whoa, this is nothing like, wait a minute, I thought we got past the campiness, kind of that feeling. Because I liked First Contact a lot. Like we talked about it, on a previous show. So
the thing, yeah, I think you're kind of circling around the fact that, and I've felt this way about this movie for a long time. TNG lived and died by the A plot, B plot, sometimes C plot. And there's an element of that here. And I think that happens because Brandon Braga, Rick Berman, they had helmed this series, all of Star Trek really, for so long that when it came to this movie, they didn't really have an action sequence like what you had in First Contact. They didn't have a change in budget and wider screen film to shoot on like they had in Generations. What they did have was the fact that Star Trek as a franchise was still riding high, and the knowledge that they could put just about any story out there that they wanted, and Star Trek fans were going to show up for it, and a lot of movie fans were going to go too. And that is what ultimately ended up happening. What they fell back on was the old TNG A plot, B plot, C plot. And so, yeah, I agree with you that it kind of it's not incoherent, but it is kind of muddied compared to the crisp story that you got coming out of First Contact.
Right. It doesn't feel like a movie. Like it just doesn't.
In
like
places it doesn't. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that is the biggest thing where it kind of felt like this was a director's cut or something, but it's not a director's cut. Like, I don't know. You're saying a lot of things that I'm totally agreeing with. Like we did have the multi-plot thing going on. And I have to say, like the first half of this movie, or at least the first, I don't know, quarter, like I think it's strong. Like it's entertaining. That whole thing with Data, I enjoyed it. Like there was a lot of, like it's well shot. Like from the first moments, I'm like, oh, that looks nice. Like I enjoyed that.
That whole opening sequence when they're going through the village and everything, and it's the Jerry Goldsmith score. Jerry Goldsmith, he's back for the score in this film, and he's got great music for this movie. Right. And so it's that very pastoral, and you see all of the families and
all practical.
Yeah. That is, and here's my trivia. That is the largest Star Trek set that's ever been made for film or any of the television series. That is the largest set. They did that just outside of Los Angeles. So this is a very large set. That's where most of the money for this movie went. And they didn't do night for day on a studio set or live like that. They actually shot at night. So all of those sequences when they're running out of the village and into the mountains, all of the villagers and everything, that's hundreds of extras that are being paid to show up at dusk and do their acting at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 a.m. So there's a lot that went into the production of this film on one of the largest sets that Star Trek had ever been able to put together. So that was impressive. And that's one of the elements that I think makes this movie feel larger than what it actually is, because the rest of it was shot on reconstituted TNG, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager sets.
So, do you mind if I add just a little
Yeah.
to your trivia there? Something I ran across was that, yes, they did have a very impressive set. However, much of that set was damaged in a storm, and so they had to reuse a lot of DS9 and Voyager sets that they redressed and put down there in the village.
To get follow-up shots and things like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah. You mentioned something a second ago, Ethan, about there being like an energy and a feeling. That is present here. Like, it's undeniable. The chemistry is there. Like, the chemistry is there. The format is there. Everything is there. The problem is that for a casual watcher, you feel kind of like you're like the black sheep watching this movie, because you're like, ha 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 ha. Like, so
what that's telling me is don't watch this movie unless you've gone and watched all of TNG.
Yeah.
I think that might be the case, because, or at least the most important parts of it,
Well, I was just going to say, if you're coming at this having just watched First Contact, you have not invested a lot of time into watching TNG, the series. First Contact was not a typical Star Trek production. And when I say that, I don't mean in the sense that it's not Star Trek, because it holds all of those what I talked about earlier as far as it's Star Trek, but it's also very, very action driven. That's not really what Star Trek is about. That's not what drives Star Trek. Star Trek is character driven. If you are a fan of any of the Star Trek franchise series, then you know that the vast majority of it is boring.
For lack of a better term.
For lack of a better term, because I have just an immense amount of love for Star Trek. So, not disparaging it in any way, but there is not a ton of action in Star Trek. That's not what Star Trek is about. First Contact was about action.
Yeah. So it's more accessible to the lay person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when we get to Insurrection, it's more of a Star Trek story.
Yeah.
It's closer to what you're going to get if you're watching Star Trek on TV for 7 years.
So ultimately, Gabe, what you're identifying is you felt a little bit lost, like you've taken a step back, right, with this movie.
Yeah, I mean,
you should feel that way.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it comes from a place of, we've watched all of the original Star Trek movies, and to be fair, this feels like those. Like the ones with the original crew.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
now, so the original series movies this movie is to TNG TV series as all those movies were to TOS TV series, in the sense that all of the action, all of the stakes, everything was raised for the movies. So just keep that in your mind and imagine what the original series TV show must have been like.
Right.
Even slower. Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I totally understand it, and I put it all together, and I might be saying certain things, but I'm not necessarily trying to be negative. I'm more just trying to set up the conversation, which I'm really enjoying. But yeah, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head, whereas it's like I could have seen a lot of people walking out of the theater when this movie came out and being pissed if they were just moviegoers.
Well, I was going to say, here again, this is a movie of a different time. People were not connected the way they are now. The internet did exist, but people were not daily on the internet saying, what movie's coming out and what backstory do I need to learn before I go and watch this film, right? That's what we do today. People didn't do that back then. So largely when this movie came out, you were aware of Star Trek, and so you were just going to see a sci-fi Star Trek film. And I don't
Gotcha.
think you had a whole lot of people coming out being like, what the heck, man? I don't get any of this that happened. I don't think there was a whole lot of that happening in 1998, honestly. And
Yeah,
so
it's almost right.
So you very much are coming at it from the time that you live in now.
Yeah, totally. No,
Yeah.
and that's
I
just
I
it.
get it. I can see somebody now not knowing Star Trek or only knowing J.J. Abrams or Paramount Plus Star Trek and watching this film and being like, "What the heck, man?" I mean,
Right.
Yeah, I very much can understand that from a modern perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's fun to have these types of discussions and talk about, it's like, hey, this is my observation. It's like, yeah, I get that. But that observation is based, is predicated on the time period you're living in right now. Whereas
yeah, this
it's really
movie is-
difficult to go,
This movie's approaching 30 years old.
yeah, I mean, it's hard to go back in time and,
Yeah.
and do that,
No,
like it's,
if I sat down with my parents when I was 20 or 17, 18 years old and watched a 30-year-old film, it was black and white.
right.
I mean, that's what we're talking about here.
Right.
And
Whereas, yeah, this movie definitely feels like it's 30 years old. Like, that's all I'm saying. Like, in terms of just it doesn't mean it's bad though. It's just it's very reminiscent
not.
of its time period, and I like the energy of that time period of movies. Like,
And-
the way like Phantom Menace feels. Like, I love that movie for its energy and the way it feels. Like, this movie even kind of has that. Like, one thought that I had is whenever the ships were in space and they're doing their thing, I thought to myself, like, those ships look really good, like, for as old as this movie is.
Okay, there's a bit of trivia here.
all right.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is the first movie where CG was done with the ships. There were no models for this movie.
Gotcha.
The Enterprise, all of it is CG at that point, and the Sona ships are the same. Yeah.
I thought it held up quite well, and it had a real
that
edge
your
to
trivia?
it.
But you were talking about the fact that the age. I think one of the things that has aged well with this film is the story of the Baku and how they. The line in the film is, "What would technology do except take us away from here?" Right? Is the Baku recognizing that technology, for all of its greatness, took them. It made for an unsatisfying life, and what they realized is that by not necessarily rejecting, although that's what they ultimately end up doing, by putting technology aside in their lives and devoting themselves to bettering themselves and enriching their lives with art and good food and hard work. I didn't recognize it so much at the time when I first saw the film, but that is a theme that I very much am recognizing is an important theme now that is, in this day and age in which we live, even more prescient. And so I think it makes this film and the message that's kind of buried in there even more important, because I, for one, am right now feeling the ever-present constant contact of the technology around me and what it brings into my life. And I'm actively looking for ways of eschewing it, and kind of reducing that footprint so that I can devote more time toward, pursuits of art and hobby and hard work and fill my life with that more than technology, because I feel its presence and I feel the negativity that comes from it, and that I feel like is a very important theme for the time in which we live today, especially when you start lumping in AI and those types of discussions. The Sona were dying, deteriorating under the weight of the technological society that they had built for themselves. And that stands diametrically opposed to the healthy Baku, who found that balance between technology and, hard work. And I think that's a very strong theme that needs to be looked at and visited today.
Ryan, you got anything to add to that?
Nope.
Sure you do.
No. So
Go for it.
You say they struck a balance. They
Well,
did not
yeah.
strike a balance.
No,
They shunned technology and put it completely behind them.
yeah.
So, I mean, we lost Gabe.
I think he had to step away. We can continue though.
Okay. It's also, it plays around with some other different themes throughout Star Trek. So I feel like somebody to really appreciate this movie needs to have seen where we're going?
I know where you're going with
Needs
this.
to have seen the original series episode, This Side of Paradise.
Yes. Yes, because I was going to ask you the question, how does Kirk handle this situation with the Baku?
Well, here's the thing, though. They are so similar, but also so different.
Very different, yeah.
They're very, very different.
But
because,
the theme is there.
yeah, the thing with the spores is that made everyone just completely complacent
Right.
with everything. So they were not improving themselves. They were not doing any hard work.
Right.
The Baku were happy with where they were, not because they were under the influence of some drug, but because they
Recognized
yeah,
the importance of what they had there.
yeah,
And were working within the limits that they set themselves for.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think Kirk rips them away from that in order to shake them free from their dream, right? But there is kind of a theme where Kirk says, if you have found paradise, you need to inject some pain and suffering in there somehow
right,
too.
right. Yeah, you're not working hard enough. You're not hurting enough.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, well, let's figure out a way for you to have to take Advil at the end of the day, right? That's kind of Kirk's mentality when he approaches situations like this.
Well, I mean, it does bring up an interesting question, though, is that why do they go to that extreme? Why does it have to be we're done with all technology and in any sort of like that type of advancement? Can they not still have machines and technology assisting them?
I think the point is to show the duality of the subject matter itself. So to have the balance which we are trying to discern right now, like with this discussion, like, yes, they could have, but that's not the point. The point is to show two diametrically completely different ways of life so that we then as the audience can find what's written between the lines and come up with what we glean out of this thing. So it's not a matter of like if they could have actually, from my perspective, it's not a matter of because what you're saying is true. Like they could have found a balance. But from a writing perspective, I don't think that was the point. The point was to present two polar opposites and have us have these types of talks.
I feel like we have a follow-up episode, an internet episode, right? A webisode where Kirk is needing to contact Anish. She doesn't have a communicator. So he leaves a communicator behind, and that's kind of the re-entry into technology. That's beneficial for her. That's the balance, he can reach out and say, hey, I'm coming for a visit. I've got, 100 days of leave I'm going to take. Something along those lines. But that's a discussion for not this movie.
Yeah. So the themes of this movie, though, do they land for you personally? And, outside of personally, do you think they're objectively well executed from a formulaic standpoint?
All right. So, again, we're kind of having some contradiction in what Star Trek's message can be at times. Because what did we learn from Star Trek 2? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
You cannot apply that argument to the Sona.
You can't?
I don't think you can. Not be on the moral high ground.
Okay. All right. So when is it okay to sacrifice the few?
Not when it's 600 that are well established on this planet.
Then how many?
I don't know what the number is, but I don't think you can't take the Vulcan IDIC.
Yeah.
IDIC. You cannot take that and apply it to this situation and expect to come out morally unscathed.
Okay. So here's the way around this.
Okay.
Right? So, no, I don't mean like morally around this.
Oh,
I
okay.
just mean here's the way that they could have avoided this. If the Sona just come to them with the Federation and say, hey, you guys, like, you have these science particles that we would love to be able to use for the benefit of all. These seem to be pretty reasonable humanitarian type people. They care about others. They might be willing to give up their home planet in order to for the benefit of everyone. Mm-hmm. Like they can see the benefit. They know that they have to make a sacrifice. So let's present that to them.
And if this was a race that was in need and approaching the Baku for the first time, I think you could have that conversation. But that's not the scenario that was playing out here. No. This was the Sona returning, knowing exactly what they needed because they had been kicked out.
Yeah.
There had been a fight. And so there had to be a resolution of that conflict first. Mm-hmm. That would have been the proper way of handling it.
Well, they can go through the Federation. For one thing, the Baku don't even realize who they're dealing with. They
Right.
don't recognize them. So you can go through the Federation and say, hey, here we can do this. And then you give the Baku the choice. They can say, yeah, we're totally for that. That sounds like a great idea. And then everybody wins. Or they can say, no, we're staying here. And then you can still have a movie. But at least they gave them the option. They went through that.
What you're saying, though, you're right. Like, you're right, but we had that story element already present, though, with the Federation and the fact that they were already dipping their toes in these waters already. So, like, they covered that angle by saying, oh, the Federation from this standpoint is already involved. And, like, am I right? Like, that's correct, is it not?
Yeah.
Yeah, but behind a duck blind.
Yeah, under false pretenses.
If they just came to them and said, hey, we have discovered, do you have this radiation that, like, it can help billions across the galaxy? Would you be willing to give it up to help billions?
And then the Baku could have made a decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
They would have. Do you think they would have said yes?
absolutely not.
Yeah, I don't think
Absolutely
so either.
not. No. But see, that's the thing. That's the struggle. That's the human condition, right?
Right.
There are answers to a lot of problems for mankind out there right now. But
Right.
who's willing to be the first person to say, you know what, I'm gonna forego a little bit of greed and a little bit of the bottom line in order to benefit a large or comforts, or a little bit of my personal wealth in order to accommodate a segment of the population that really could use the help. People don't make that decision, and that's the thing. Star Trek presents these ideas in certain ways, but there's not a real solution to them. Star Trek just helps us to look at and say, how would I personally feel if confronted with that situation? How would I have handled it? And and that's the problem with the human condition, is that there are no real good answers out there.
Right.
And in this case, it was presented in a way that allows us to get on the side of our crew. But the reality is, it's a very tough. If you were going to approach it the way you said, full disclosure, here's the problem. Are you willing to work with us on a solution? We know what the Baku answer is, and that creates more difficulty. and sadly, that's what humanity's facing right now, in general, in the world around
I'm
us
not
today.
convinced that we do know what the Baku's answer is.
Maybe not. You know what? That would be an interesting story if it
There
were
is
allowed to-
No, it
yeah,
wouldn't.
that
No,
is an interesting story because
That would not be an interesting story, and that's not why. That's why they made this movie.
Right.
I'm saying that's what they should have done as real people, but that's not a good movie. It's just, hey, can you help us? Yes. Roll
no,
credits.
I mean, how many of them did you say there were? There's 600.
600, yeah, 600.
Okay,
Baku.
so I can tell you what would have happened in that scenario. There would have been a group that would have been like, "No, I don't want to do that."
Yeah,
Which
fracture. It would have
fracture. Like, there's no way they would have all gone for it. So
It would
in
have
a
become
way,
partisan. Yeah.
we have that same thing here with the other, the stretchy face people. You know what I mean?
Yep.
What would you know what I mean? That
Sona.
that plot line is there. So
They fractured first.
I think they spent too much time in the sauna.
yeah, I think
Oh,
you're
boy.
right. Yeah.
You know when your fingers get all pruny? That's kind of what
Yeah.
was happening with their face. Yeah.
They need
So
some
proud
climate therapy. Yeah. Hot, cold, hot, cold. They need to go back and forth. For me, as I've said this before, I'm a very casual Star Trek watcher, and from my perspective, I do look at things from the lens of the modern age because I consume a lot of stuff across multiple mediums that kind of is tethered to this day and age. And to me, it's like when I watch these movies, I really have to give it a lot of energy and a lot of thought because they are not accessible to new audience members. They're just not. But that being said, there's a silver lining there that's been with every single one of these movies, especially the TNG ones where I'm like, man, I have got to watch the show. And I think when you have that element present there, whereas I've felt that with every single one of these movies, even back in TOS era, I'm like, man, I've got to devote, like that's something I want to get to it at some point, So watching these movies kind of reinforces that energy, and it's fun watching. I love having kind of the juxtaposition of somebody who doesn't really know anything, and it's very, very, like I said, like the Star Trek light comes on when I'm ready to talk about it, and when I when we make a plan to talk about it. But outside of that, I'm kind of disconnected, but I want to be more connected. So that versus you guys who have been connected for decades now at this point and have so much to say and a lot of insight and personal feelings, and you know the lore, you know the history. It's fun, to kind of get together and have a discussion around those things. So I think my favorite theme, that lesson that I took from this movie was, just don't take the simple things for granted. That moment when we see Jordy looking at the sunset for the first time and we see, tears in his eyes, and it's like, yeah, I've seen some beautiful sunsets, and it is something you can really take for granted, but it's truly awesome. Like, it's truly incredible. And I think there's a lot of little moments sprinkled in throughout this movie that were just feel good. And I think reaffirm the rhetoric that Star Trek that you guys have been talking about this whole time. Like, there were moments there. I do think it's not, I don't want to say it's disrespectful, like make whatever movie you want. I think it's strange to set a precedent for something or establish a new precedent or send a message like what was there with First Contact, where it's really engaging. It's like if there was new moviegoers or new people that were approaching the franchise for the first time, it's like you would think that there would be some of that injected in the future installments. So to see that immediately kind of taken out, and I'm not saying there's no action in this movie, but to your guys' credit, it's very, very little. And it feels like a super long episode of TNG.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pros there, and there's not really many objective cons it's purely viewpoint. Like I'm saying, I think it's a con to show First Contact as being this thing, and then have your follow-up that is done by the same director do something in a completely different vein. Now, on one hand, I think that's impressive to be able to execute in multiple lanes. Like, I think that's cool. So again, I'm kind of looking at this from multiple perspectives, and I really did enjoy my time with this movie, but I don't see myself coming back to it anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, you may revisit that question to yourself if you become a Star Trek fan and watch TNG through.
Sure.
Because, like you're just saying, okay, you had First Contact, that was one thing, and then you have this. Well, what this is more like what you're going to see in a Star Trek The Next Generation TV episode. Mm-hmm. It's a long episode, is really what it is.
There's a lot of times when you'll watch TNG, and I don't know if this is your experience, but my experience is I've finished an episode of Next Generation and have thought, man, what could they have done if they'd had a budget and another hour? Mm-hmm. That would be an incredible story. Mm-hmm. You kind of have that here. And if you're just looking at the movies, it can be really hard to look at this one, or really easy to look at this one and say, it's not that great. But this is kind of the wish fulfillment of that person watching Saturday Night Next Generation and thinking, what would it be like if they had a bigger budget and an extra hour? And that's what we have here. And
Sure.
so I've always been able to look back at this movie and be like, well, this is what TNG was, and this is just more of it. And for me, it's satisfying to look at because you look at the themes that come out of the film. One of the things that we haven't talked about, it's one of the things that my wife appreciates about the film, is there's this jaded viewpoint of, even in Star Trek, that people that live forever are somehow unfulfilled. But that's not the case here. You have a race of people that have lived 200, 300, 400 years, and they're finding ways to continue to better themselves and enjoy life. And that's kind of refreshing, even from a Star Trek point of view. And you look at our crew, they've always said, we know we grow old and die. That's the human condition, and we accept it and we appreciate it. But when they get a little bit of their youthful energy back, man, how much did they revive and relish, the environment that they were in and the situation that they were in. And they were revived. They were more vitalized. And like Geordi appreciating the sunset after being blind for so long and accepting his condition of what it was, but now for it to be changed in such a beautiful way. All of these things kind of filter into the fact that, yeah, we acknowledge that we get old and we die and we miss out on our youth. But how wonderful is that to gain a little bit of that back? How wonderful would that be? And it kind of gives you a glimpse of, if we could live forever, man, it could be a really great thing. It's not
right.
It's not after 20,000 years, you're just going to be bored with life and you'll want to end it. And I feel like a lot of sci-fi kind of presents that as that would be the human condition.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Well, I mean, the entire a big piece of the subject matter around Star Trek is pushing boundaries, going where no man has ever gone, when in reality you're finding all this positivity and goodness and the things that you have right in front of you. So in the most simplistic of those things, right in front of you. So yeah, I totally understand everything you guys are saying, and I enjoy this movie more with now having discussion around it, because it's good to have people that can kind of fill in the gaps of the things that I'm just not, I'm unfortunately unable to approach with the same viewpoint, the same worldview.
Gabe, I gotta say, I appreciate you going through these movies. It's interesting to get someone with your perspective, someone so young, which is a line from the film. So, anyway.
All right. And they started making fun of me. So, no, I'm just kidding.
That means it's time to wrap it up.
Yeah, time to wrap it up. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been our discussion of Star Trek IX Insurrection. I was watching it on Pluto TV. First of all, I want to say, Ethan, thank you for your time. Ryan, thank you for joining us on this episode. It was great to have you, have your comments. Right after this one was over, Nemesis immediately started playing after that. And that is what is on the docket next. Hopefully not a year from now. That would suck. But hopefully we can get into Nemesis, because I've seen that movie before. Like, I actually went to the theater to see it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, whenever I was a really little kid. But I knew
we're in the
I was
21st century now.
Yes, exactly. So, it was interesting to have memories of the beginning of that movie, when everyone kind of gets turned to stone and that whole thing. Like,
and of a
so
very young Tom Hardy.
Yeah. So that'll be what's next on the docket. And I don't think Ethan has very many positive things to say about that one. And Ryan, you're more than welcome to join again if you want to. Right. Have you seen Nemesis, Ryan?
I think so. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's all the time we have for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Ethan, Ryan, do you guys have any final words?
No. Check out Drive Back the Night, an Andromeda Series podcast. There's a few episodes out there that I think if you liked our back and forth here, you're going to love those. So check it out.
It's pretty much just us doing that for an hour.
Yeah.
You may get sick of it pretty quick.
You may not.
I understand.
But...
And also, we're usually a little more prepared when we do that show. So
yeah.
It's not that much
and a whole lot more inebriated. No.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much again for your time, and that will wrap it up. Say goodbye, gentlemen.
Goodbye, gentlemen.
Live long and prosper.